Right now, you're probably thinking, boy, am I glad I left the kids at home for this episode. Am I the only one that can hear that? There's the fucking mail truck always has no muffler on it. Drives me crazy. It's one of the few sounds that can penetrate my fortress of solitude here. And the mail lady, she's a sweetheart too. It's not her fault. Not at all. It's the U.S. fucking government's fault. Ah, damn it. That drives me crazy.
Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Let me tell you, you my little boo thing, so I'll give a hoot what you do say, girl. I know you a little too tame. I'll be shooting that shot like 2K, girl. I know. Tell 'em I'm next. Tell 'em you find a little something too fresh. I know. Tell 'em I'm next. Tell 'em you find a little something too fresh. I know.
Welcome, everyone, to another absolutely fantabulous, super spectacular episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have the Podcast Matchmaker. She's a podcast publicist, host of the award-winning show called My Simplified Life. She works with entrepreneurs, authors, and experts to help hone their storytelling abilities, grow their businesses, and elevate themselves as thought leaders. Her first book just came out earlier this year in January, How to Get on Podcasts. So a lot of you listeners who are out there are probably going, hey, how do I get on podcasts? Well, you're in luck. Thrive Loud listeners, I bring you Michelle Glogovac. Michelle, welcome to Thrive Loud.
Lou. Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you. I could listen to you all day.
Oh, well, many people do. I would hope.
As they should.
I want them to listen to you, though, today. That's the purpose of what this show is all about here. Michelle, this is pretty cool stuff. We're approaching our 1,000th episode. The time we're recording this is in early May. And we've had a lot of guests on the show. And a lot of people always ask me, Lou, how do you get your guests on your show? And a lot of people come to me. And I think a lot of people try to figure this out. So let's do a little rewind. Before we get into the work that you do, I want to learn how this podcast matchmaking thing you do became your gig.
So, long story. I spent 18 years in corporate aviation selling jet fuel to corporate flight departments.
Well, there's a natural progression. I totally see how that connects. Yes,
it does. And I've been asked this enough times that I can now see how the two different careers match. And it is because both were based and are based on my relationships. And I was never in love with jet fuel. I didn't like the smell of jet fuel in the morning. There are mugs about that. And I was like, no, I loved the people. I loved everyone I worked with. I loved my clients. I could tell you birthdays and anniversaries, and that's what connected us. And so now on the podcasting side, it's exactly the same. It's connecting with my clients, connecting with podcast hosts, sharing the stories of clients so that they can help the listener in the end. And that's how the two are similar and why I am doing well and am successful in my past career and in the current career is because I just love people and I love getting to know other people and sharing those stories. And it wasn't until my second child was born. I have kids who are Irish twins. So they're a year and 3 weeks apart.
Oh boy.
And I was laid off from the corporate gig. And, it was the blessing in disguise, as they say, because I took that moment as this is not where I'm meant to be. I need to make the world a better place for these two tiny humans. What can I do that brings in an income and allows me to feel like I'm making the world a better place for their future? And that's when I discovered podcasts in 2018. I started listening. There was one particular business life coach who said, we all have a purpose and a passion. And I was like, yeah, I got to figure out what mine is. And I was sharing all of her content because I was on this journey to figure it out. And she reached out and said, do you want to pitch me to be on other shows? Because my content's obviously resonating with you. And that was the beginning to what is today.
Awesome. I love it. From jet fuel to podcast. I don't think we've ever had that as an opening. My team is literally saying, I think we found the title for this podcast episode. So Michelle, let's give the listeners a little bit of a behind the scenes, because we have two different sides of the coin here. People are not familiar with this. There is a world of thought leaders out there, lots of people trying to figure out how to get their voice out there, whether it's a book that they've written, a speech that they speak about, a business that they're trying to feature. And obviously podcasting has become an incredible channel to do this and to grow their business and to get their voice heard. So they come on programs like Thrive Loud and other ones that are there to try to, connect the dots here. How do you help them connect the dots on what makes the most sense for them and what programs for them to go on?
So first we discuss, who is it you're trying to reach? Who is your ideal audience, your ideal listener, your ideal reader, your ideal client? And where are those people listening to podcasts? That's one of the first things that we need to figure out. The next is, what can you speak on that is unique? And I'm not talking about your book, your product, or your service. I'm talking about your journey, your story. What made you launch that business? What made you write the book? What's so special about what you do? And don't go pitching yourself about, I'm a 6-figure entrepreneur. So is everyone else. What makes you unique? I think that we tend to think of ourselves as, I'm not special. Somebody else has been through that too. But it's the way you've gotten through whatever it is that you've had to get through, the way you can tell your story, and the steps that you've taken to get to where you are today. It's exactly what a podcast listener is looking for, because someone is where you used to be. And you're going to help them get to that next step, that next level, by sharing and educating, inspiring, and motivating that person. So your goal is to create these speaking topics that are unique to you and long, make them like the title of an episode, and add a subtitle if you need to, but create something that is not generic, that stands out to a podcast host. And then go research those podcasts. Look for shows that have your ideal listener in there, and then listen to an episode or two. Don't go in cold, relate, and be personal. I think that's something that we lack so much today. There's a lot of copy and paste. But give of yourself, share, hey, Lou, this is why I loved this episode with Michelle. I used to be in aviation too. Something to that effect that shows that you have listened, you care, and you know what the goal of that show is.
So Michelle needs to know that I gave a speech to a whole bunch of authors, speakers, and professional folks about 1.5 years ago on how you can make money as a podcast guest. And I talked about the essence of going on it. And one of the first things that I stated before telling them that they should find someone like you, the Podcast Matchmaker, to get on the right show, was that they need to get on podcasts and tell their story. And the way that they can do this is ask to go on the program. So I want to talk about this because I get over, and we're bragging here, we get close to 200 people a month that want to come on this show. And we only do 2 to 3 episodes a week, depending on the week and how we're all feeling, to people to get on. So it's a lot of people that are coming in and are starting to ask, and they've all started to figure this out. They obviously were listening to me that day, Michelle. So the question I ask you is, how can they best ask and position themselves? People who are looking to work with you, what do you do with them to kind of not only figure out what they could talk about on the show, but the best way to position them so that they can find the best match across the podcast that makes the sense to them?
It's really about sharing yourself and being as open and honest and free with whatever knowledge you have. I think that, so often people hoard that knowledge of, I'm not going to tell you how I did it, but here I am, and this is what I did, and look at me, versus really sharing and saying, look, I wrote this book on how to get on podcasts, and I'm giving you every single secret tip I have. Every tool in my toolbox is there because I want to help you. And I think that if you pitch yourself in that same manner to say, I truly want to help someone who's listening. I don't want to sell myself. I'm not here to promote myself. We know you are. Okay. A podcast host is there, we know, ultimately to get their name out. But to outright say that is a huge no-no. And it's what's going to turn off any host and any listener, because it shines through that you're here simply for yourself. versus showing up and sharing what you know and sharing your story and really being as genuine, and I hate the word authentic, but be yourself, be authentic. Because if you are, people will see, they hear it in your voice. They'll go follow you in your Instagram and, wherever else you are, and they will see, are you the same person that's showing up that was on that podcast interview? Are you showing up in all of these places? Are you sharing that interview? Hosts are looking at all of this, and this is what's going to get that yes, is if you are being as generous as possible with what you know, with where you've been, and then also sharing that you've been in these places as a way to thank the host. They're all going to be those stepping stones to getting that yes to being a guest on a podcast.
Awesome. I love this because I would love every one of the people who come on the program to listen to every single thing that Michelle just said, because every now and then, look, we get people from all walks of life, and a lot of times we're reaching out to them, and we have a very specific audience of those that are thriving in their lives, their businesses, and their passions, like yourself. And you'll be amazed at a lot of times what happens is they're in pitch mode. Their book has just come out. They've just launched their new business or a new product, or they've got something new going on, and they are going on multiple different shows, and then they come on the show, and it's now all of a sudden become a job. And we're going to say this together. What really connects with the people that listen are the people that listen and interact with the host in a way that makes it like a fun conversation, as opposed to the sales pitch or the materials that they can get on some sizzle reel in it. And what ends up happening, I understand it. They've got a laundry list. People like you are giving them so many different places for them to go that's helping them promote and get their brand out. And they get a little tired. So do you motivate your people to remind them of this message? Because that does happen, right? When you find the right shows, the right places, the ways that they know that, what are the things you tell the people that work with you before they go on the show what they should do?
They actually get a to-do list. They have to listen to the podcast beforehand, and they get the links to all of that. We give them as much information as possible to stalk the host the way that we have stalked the host and the show. I want you to go read the about page, go listen to an episode or two, read the description, know what you're showing up for. And if at any moment you feel like this is too many, this is becoming a job, remember that when you're calendaring these bookings and you're choosing the date and the time, give yourself a break if you need to. Take that pause and don't record for a week. And that is absolutely okay. But you need to show up and be ready. And I've actually created playlists of confidence and calm and, breath work and meditation of if you need to get something else in that mindset so you can show up as your best self, then go listen to something else. But, make sure you have a good night's sleep. You have drank your water. You have your phone in airplane mode. So that way you can show up perfectly. You're ready. You're able. You are not typing an email while you're doing the interview. I have been on the other side of that. Be present. And these are all, they're such small, you would think they're things that you wouldn't have to tell another human being, and yet you do.
We've had some, I don't know if I've ever had anyone typing an email, although I will tell you, I know that I've had distracted guests at times. Something has happened or something has bleeped across their screen. And usually, as you just got to experience, I give a couple of things that we do before we start. I'm like, make sure there's water nearby. Make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Make sure I get to focus on the things that we're doing. And I give a run of show of what they do. Not every host does this. And a lot of times they're expecting people to have done it. And for the amount of episodes we've done on this program, we know that there are people who have a familiarity with it. Yet we also know that they get shocked when they get to certain parts of the interview. That's why I always rerun it through them at that moment, because there's a lot of other stuff out there. You wear a lot of hats, though, right? Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to.
I was going to say there's multiple platforms too, and that's why I always say test out your platform so that way you don't show up and you're nervous and you're this isn't working, and where do I have to be to do all of these things ahead of time and to show up. This is not the time to be fashionably late.
Yes.
Even 2 minutes is too late for me in my book. Show up on time, if not a minute or two early.
What does somebody say? On time is really a few minutes late. Is somebody one time told me that? I got that's how you are. But
Not
we
for a
also
podcast, no.
we understand that we give a threshold. We understand there's a lot going on, and many times, by the way, like I'll run over. I record in certain periods of blocks of time so that I can do the other parts of my life and my job, and it's real important for me to make sure that I'm fluid. And what I'll do is if I see that I'm back to back to back, I'll even send a message to all the people I'm interviewing to say, I could be running a little late. And I've seen that too on the flip flop from a really well prepared guest, or they'll space it out and say, I'm only doing in half-hour blocks or whatever it is, or giving myself 10 minutes to go to the bathroom. Because that has happened. I actually one time got a guest on, this is great. This is my 4th podcast. Got to go to the facilities. We're checking it out.
I've done that as well. I've been there.
So Michelle is a host. I'm going to ask this question because this is my favorite part, because you are now an author. You're an entrepreneur. You are helping match people into podcasts in that job that you're doing, the actual doing of the job. And obviously, as I mentioned, you're helping to pull it all together as somebody who has a family and whatnot. You have a lot of hats that you have to wear. When you wake up in the morning, of all the tasks or things that you have to do, which is the hat you like wearing most?
Well, I have to say mom, right?
No, you don't.
I do. I absolutely love being a mom. I do. They're 9 and 8 right now. They just had birthdays in March, and they're a blessing and sometimes a curse, right? They're kids. They're wonderful. That would be my favorite hat. But I get out of bed excited to work. I love doing what I do. I love working with the clients I work with. I'm very lucky that I get to read the books of my clients or the books of my guests on my show. So I get paid to read, which is like a dream come true. Who can say that? Those are the things that I love to do the most. And then to create these matches, there's something I find beautiful and rewarding in being able to say, you know what? You should really talk to this person because you're going to hit it off in some way. You're going to have a great conversation. There's going to be magic that's going to happen. And then it does. And thousands, millions of people this year, we've had, you're going down to 6 million downloads. We have reached, I think we're over 3 million podcast listeners this year, and we're only in May. So, and that's not my show. That's all of our clients being on other shows. So to me, that's a big deal. Last year, we were hoping for 1 million. We got there and we're already at 3. I'm like, oh no, it's going to be next year because we have lofty goals we keep setting. But I love being able to do that, knowing that somebody out there is listening to an episode that I helped put together, and it's going to help them in some way in their life.
I want to talk about the matches that didn't work out so well. Let's give an example. Like, obviously, look, it is hard to get the right guests to the right audience, and even you could do your certain work. Have you had an instance of something that was just not the right mix? Somebody that might be focused on a new AI technology that gets put on a knitting show. I know that wouldn't happen, but I'm giving you an example of something that didn't quite gel the way you had anticipated.
Nothing has been that far off. I might have had a client say, you know what, that host kind of went down maybe a Christian field that we didn't see coming. Mm-hmm. That would probably be the most far off, that it wasn't maybe a Christian related podcast. And yet somehow that came up, and I've been in that position as well. I was actually a guest on a show, and she went down a totally different path than I thought we were going to go. And pronouns were brought up. And I was like, oh, are we going there now? Okay, let's talk about it. That would have been the one, okay, where do we go? And luckily, if it's me, I know that I can kind of redirect as much as I can and come back to what the topic really is at hand, versus going down a rabbit hole and having a more political conversation around that.
Or those sensitive ones are always tough, and when you don't expect it, right? And that's the environment you're going into.
Yeah. And the blame was put on me that I had my pronouns in because it was a Zoom and I put my pronouns there. And she said, well, that's not appropriate. I should know who you are. And I went, but do you? I think it's only fair to everybody else that, I share who I am, so that way you can be comfortable sharing who you are. But yeah, that was an interesting one.
You obviously have been thriving in a lot of the different works that you do, which is great. And you've also been a content creator, not only for your book, How to Get on Podcasts. We'll put all the links, listeners. We'll do that in the plug section shortly. But you also have your own show, My Simplified Life. And I love asking content creators this question. Your content is a gift to the listeners or to the readers in this particular case, or when you do the audiobook, to the listeners for that book. And that gift is something that you've given out and put out into the universe. Yet there's always a happy accident and a special gift that you as the content creator gets in return. For My Simplified Life, or maybe even more recently for How to Get on Podcasts, what has been the gift that you have received in creating this type of content?
I think one of the big gifts is that you never know who's listening, who's watching, who's reading. And I put out my show. I say I'm very selfish about My Simplified Life because I interview people I want to learn from, people I want to talk to. And so I'm always surprised when someone reaches out and says, I listened to this episode and I loved it. I'm like, you did? Somebody's listening? So that's always a surprise to me. Doing the audiobook, that was a dream come true, to be able to record my own audiobook. And in the moment of recording it, the audio engineer had me stop and he said, I have never been so inspired. We might just need to stop recording because I'm ready to go out and do something with my life. And to get that kind of feedback, it means that I know that what I'm doing is the right thing, to be able to inspire someone else with, yes, I would love to inspire someone. How do I do it? I don't know. It's one of those, it's a humbling moment to go, oh, I've helped you in some way. Good, because that's what I would love to do. That's my intention, but I don't know if I'm actually doing it until someone says, you helped me do this.
We all have those days when we're not quite kicking on all cylinders and we are not thriving the way we should. Michelle Glogovac, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or maybe which individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
I have to go outside. Something with nature, whether it's just sitting in the backyard or taking a walk, that is what gets me back into the right headspace, into thriving. I'm taking back up exercise, which has helped. And, taking the longer walks, seeking out the people that I seek out are my family. My kids will lift you up no matter where you are. If they see a tear coming out of your eyes, then they're the first to give you a hug and say, it's going to be okay. And those are my people, my kids, my husband, and then just going outside, not where people are, but, the backyard of, okay, this is what's beauty around me. And that's what's going to keep me going.
Let's do the admin part of the show, Michelle, here before we get down Fun Street. Share with the listeners all the places people can find you, grab your book, learn about you, learn about the podcast matchmaking, all the stuff that you do. We'll put it in the show notes, but it gets way more engagement when they hear it from you.
Thank you. You can go to themlgcollective.com or my personal website, michelleglogovac.com. The book is available everywhere you buy books, in ebook, hardback, audiobook. If you like listening to me, then you will love the audiobook because I will read it to you. My Simplified Life is on all of your podcast listening platforms. I'm on Instagram at Michelle Glogovac. I'm on X and Threads and LinkedIn and Facebook and all of the places. You can find me either at the MLG Collective or Michelle Glogovac.
That's Glogovac for those that are driving and looking at the name right now on the screen of the podcast. Or if you're watching a maps and you're trying to navigate somewhere with the podcast in the background as you're listening and you're not actually seeing it. That's why I spelled it out for you. Okay. Michelle, you ready to go down Fun Street here on Thrive?
I'm ready.
You shared with me earlier what your all-time favorite movie is. Can you share it with the listeners?
Casablanca. You can't go wrong. I did.
What's the part that connects with you the most about it?
Oh, the end is obviously, I won't spoil it for anyone who's been living under a rock. And
if they haven't seen it, they need to go out and see it, even though it's bordering on, like, it's 85 years old, that movie now at this point.
Which is amazing. But, even the music, I find myself, I'll sing to it in the bar, right? And it's a beautiful movie. I love it. And friendships is what it comes down to.
We're going to go down what we love to call the Speakeasy Pub Crawl. We're going to navigate down Fun Street to all your favorite places, and you're going to provide some guidance for us. Take a shot of gumption and give us the answers to the things that matter most to you. Are you ready to hit that?
I hope so. I am.
Of late, Michelle, a song that you love to listen to or one that pumps you up?
Oh, You're My Little Boo Thing.
Nice.
We sing it in the car all the time. Totally inappropriate for children, yet we sing it.
It's all right. Kids, when you're listening to this episode playback, this music will be playing under the episode as we bring it in, put it out, and she'll be very happy with that. So,
oh, I love it. Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
try to keep the appropriate things, on the. Yeah, we won't be able to, but anyway, we'll keep going. A favorite food that's not a dessert.
Sushi,
Favorite dessert.
cheesecake,
An activity you wish you did more of.
workout,
An activity you wish you did less of.
workout. No.
I was spoon feeding that one to you. An activity that's relatively new to you, that you've recently tried, that you like so much you want to tell everybody else to try.
Oh, I feel like I'm on this workout thing now.
Okay.
You know what? Walking with friends.
Okay, that's a good one. I like that. If I could snap my fingers and Michelle Glogovac can be anywhere in the world, where is she?
The British Virgin Islands.
Ooh, have you been?
I have.
And you like it?
I loved it. Yeah, I was on Necker Island, which is Richard Branson's island.
Yeah.
Oh, I could move in. Yeah. That's the life. Yes.
We'll call Richard and tell him to put up a little house for you, and I think he'll be okay. He can handle it.
Yeah, sure. What's one more?
Michelle Glogovac, the Podcast Matchmaker, My Simplified Life, How to Get on Podcasts. Hey, thank you so much for coming on Thrive Loud. Pleasure to have you. Everybody check her out. Find her on all these places, specifically if you're trying to get your voice heard out there and get on the right show. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Lou. It's been so much fun.
To all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You my little boo thing, so I don't give a hoot what you do. Say, girl, I know you a little too tame. I'll be shooting that shot like 2K, girl, I know. Tell him I'm next. Tell him you find a little something too fresh, I know. Tell him I'm next. Tell him you find a little something too fresh, I know.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.